everybody. Really exciting to be here. We're going to talk a little bit about the new face of R&D, which really is kind of the old face in R&D, but kind of remixed in a way that works for big companies, in this case, Capital One. So this is my first DC week, and I'm still fairly new to the DC area. I moved out here a little bit less than a year ago, so kind of to start off, I figured it was only fair if I told you a little bit about me. I might have to stand closer. There we go. So I grew up in New Orleans, so I tend to use a lot of New Orleans references. My life resembles a pot of gumbo in the sense that I've done a lot of things, I've lived a lot of places, but similar to a lot of the Cajun food, the more you add, the more interesting it gets, or so I like to say. So I'll run through this really quickly. I was born and raised in New Orleans, oldest of 4 girls, and like any person, typically when you hit the age of 18, the first thing you want to do is get as far away as possible from where you're from. For me, that was Seattle. Couldn't get much further away than New Orleans. While I was there, I also discovered something called snow and picked up snowboarding. And part of the reason I was at Seattle was because I had the privilege to join the Xbox team at Microsoft, which was really my first real peek at what innovation at a big company looked like. And for those of you who know it, it was a really huge success story, and it was a really crazy fun ride to be on. So after about 4 years of that, I really wanted to get closer to the startup culture. So I moved down to Palo Alto and went to Stanford, got my MBA there. And then moved down to San Francisco. And while I was there, I met a man named Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia. Really, really inspiring, amazing man. And he was incubating a company called WikiCities inside Wikipedia. I helped him spin that out, and we grew it to become Wikia, which is one of the largest consumer collaboration platforms in the world today. That was kind of the true startup R&D experience. We did everything you can think of a startup did. It was a crazy roller coaster ride. And after 5 years there, I needed a much needed break. Actually, during my time there, the Saints won the Super Bowl. And my life kind of came full circle because I went down to New Orleans for that, and I ran into, for those of you who are Halo fans, Master Chief dressed up in a Saints uniform. So kind of my worlds colliding there. So after that, I took a much-needed break, although some might not think this was a break, and I went to Tanzania and volunteered for a while and really kind of got to get back to the roots of really what makes this world a special place, and that's children. And then I ended up in D.C., and so some of you might ask, what are you doing in D.C.? And I'm at Capital One Labs, and I really have the privilege here of being part of an amazing team of entrepreneurs, some might say intrapreneurs, who are really reimagining the way that people interact with their money. And what we're doing is applying all the principles of a great digital company. Big data, open platforms, modern design methodologies, and combining those in a way to really, at the end of the day, help people better save, invest, transact, and spend their money. So, Capital One actually is no stranger to disruptive innovation. People don't really think of innovation when they think of banks, but I think Capital One is a little bit different. I sort of question asking this question, but if anyone's willing to share, if they know and are willing to share what the APR on their credit card is. Anybody know? 7.65. 14. So if you asked this question, 15, 20 years ago, everyone would have the same exact answer, 18.9%. And it was really Rich Fairbanks, our founder, who came up with the insight and really had this belief that if you combined information, really large data sets with technology and great marketing, you could customize financial products and really offer people different products based on their credit worthiness and their spend behavior. And this got coined as information-based strategy. There's a Harvard Business School case about it. Rich Fairbanks is viewed as one of the pioneers in the big data space because of this work. And he really used it to, I'm sure you've all received direct mail. Capital One actually has their own rate with the U.S. Postal Service because of their incredibly high usage of testing to figure out what the right message is and do micro-targeting at a mass scale. They used this experimentation to come up with the balance transfer product, which is now ubiquitous in the credit card industry. And so I point this out because, innovation doesn't really come naturally to a lot of financial services, but it's in our core DNA. And I think over the last few years, what we've noticed is that there are a bunch of new entrants who are really challenging us to expand the idea of what a financial services company is. And with that, they're bringing these practices around innovation and release early and often. They're really testing the market and learning a lot quicker than the traditional banks are. So Rich, being the pioneer that he has, really recognized that if we want to compete in this market and really be part of the next generation of great financial services companies, we need to raise our game. So just kind of wanted to set that context for a little bit. And so kind of leaves the questions like, how are you guys doing this? And we were really thoughtful about this. The labs team launched officially about a year ago, and we spent the last year putting together 4 really big building blocks that we think are setting us up for success. I'll run quickly through these. The first one, as every real estate agent will tell you, is location, location, location. We really wanted these teams to be at the center of the ecosystems so that we could foster collaboration, hire the top talent. So we opened 2 offices, one in San Francisco, pretty much next door to Twitter and Square and LinkedIn and Facebook and Google's offices in San Francisco. What's really neat about this office is we're actually in the ING Direct Cafe. Capital One acquired ING Direct last year. And so our team members are having daily interactions with our customers, which is really, really powerful. Our second office is here, just about a mile away in Clarendon. And one of the things we did is, by design, these offices are really small. You could probably fit max 30, 40 people working in them. And this was important. We really wanted to create this type of really intimate environment where we could bring people together to work. O-Power talked a lot about hiring talent. And this is one we really focus on a lot. If you want to do disruptive innovation, you have to hire people that think differently. So when we are hiring at the lab, we're looking at people who don't come from a financial services background and are really looking to bring new viewpoints, new perspectives to the problems we're facing. We look for people who are from small companies, small tech startup experiences that embrace constraints and enjoy wearing many hats. We look for people that have consumer product launch experience. They've kind of been through that roller coaster of releasing product to the market. They're kind of addicted to the rush of it, and they won't stop until they get there. Finally, we look for learners, not masters. We talked about how quickly the world of APIs are evolving and all of these new languages that are gaining scale. And we really want people who are excited about jumping on these new technologies and learning them really quickly. We recently hired an iOS developer, master iOS developer, best one we've interviewed in a very long time. And within a month, he's actually working on big data on Hadoop clusters because he just wants to learn something new, much to my chagrin, but we're excited about that. Finally, if you hire these great people, you really have to make sure you're creating a collaborative and fun environment. For those of you who were at the O-Power talk earlier, they talked a lot about this, and we employ a lot of the same principles. If people enjoy where they work and they enjoy coming to work every day, they'll work a lot harder and they'll be a lot happier. So we spend a lot of time focusing on this. Everyone sits out in the open. There are no offices, no desks. For people who have experience at a bank, this is virtually unheard of. We have VPs sitting next to college new hires, and really, it's a really fun place to work. We've hosted a couple MoDev events there recently, so if you guys are part of that community, we welcome you. Finally, there we go. Very apropos given the last panel, open your platform. So we announced a couple months ago that we were building 2 APIs, a deals API and a rewards API. This is pretty exciting stuff for a bank. And really, if you think about it, banks have a ton of information, and specifically if you think about rewards, we're sitting on $2 billion of rewards that sit on our balance sheet, and these are rewards that customers have yet to redeem. And if we can open that up to all of the developers and entrepreneurs in the world who need access to currency to sell things to their customers, we can create some really powerful things. So we're really excited about our APIs. So these are kind of the 4 things we've done in the last year as kind of building blocks. I guess I have to stand back here. So you would think, into the story, let the magic happen. Well, we all know that it's not that simple. And what I want to do is kind of run you through a story of the typical day in the life of building a product inside Capital One and one particular story in general. So every great story has a protagonist. This is Chris Clark, a product manager on our team. I think he's actually in the audience if you want to wave. Hi, Chris. Chris is friends with Bieber, so for those of you that are Bieber fans, hit him up later. He's got his phone number. Chris is a rock star product manager, and when he first joined the lab, the first thing he did was start looking for problems. How can I make the lives of Capital One customers better? How can I come up with a new experience that improves the daily lives of how people interact with their finances? And the first thing he saw was that there was a big problem, which we allude to. 33% of reward points go unused. So this isn't a Capital One stat. This is an independently published survey. They also actually had a shocking thing that they think this is the average household has $200 a year of unspent reward points. This is free money that is just sitting around not being used. So Chris, like a typical problem solver, started thinking about, how can we solve this problem? Now, we're big fans of the D School human-centered design methodology. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the D School, but it was started at Stanford by Jim Kelly, the founder of IDEO. And the basic premise is that every good product starts with a fundamental consumer insight, and the best way to get that insight is through empathy research, which is code for talking to people. So what Chris did is he went around and talked to people, and he said, why don't you use your reward points? What have you used your reward points for? What do you think about your reward points? And what he got back was pretty eye-opening. Basically, it's hard to use them. I never think about them. I don't think I can get cool stuff. I don't spend enough money to get cool stuff. So we started realizing that people's perceptions about their reward points were maybe different than the reality. And so as every good product manager, we came up with an app for that. So we decided there really needed to be this cool app that allowed you to buy cool stuff, pizza, beer, candy, coffee, with your reward points instantly. Remove all the middleman processes of having to log into your credit card account, navigate to some Sky Mall portfolio, and find that stroller or that camcorder that you've been dying for at the end of the year. But instead, bring it into people's lives every day where they are, where they're already shopping, where they're already interacting, and showing them that redeeming your reward points can be something fun and something that you can do all the time. Now, we're also big fans of remote controls that work. Big fan of Eric Ries's lean startup methodology, not to keep throwing fun buzzwords at you. And really, his whole premise is, what are you trying to learn? Figure out what you're trying to learn, and then figure out the cheapest, fastest way you can learn it, and learn through diligently testing hypotheses. And in this case, we had all kinds of ideas for what we wanted to build. But the first thing we did is we drew it. We sketched it up. We put it in a mock-up prototype. We loaded it on a phone, and Chris went out and accosted people on the streets in front of Starbucks and in the halls of Capital One and said, hey, what do you think of this app? What do you think it does? Would you use it? Why? What do you think it should do? And by asking all these open-ended questions, we were able to get a lot of data that basically confirmed our hypothesis that there should be an app for that. So we were feeling pretty good about ourselves, and the next step is to go build it. So Chris recruited a designer and a developer and said, let's build this. Now, designers and developers have really, really grand ambitions. They want to build the coolest app that's ever been invented with the most complicated capabilities, with all the bells and whistles. And designers want to design things pretty. So Chris had a really tough job of really focusing them on what is the minimum viable product we need to build to test whether people actually want to use their points to buy candy, coffee, or pizza. And we did a few things to really speed up the development of this because we really wanted to learn really quickly. First thing is we built a native iPhone app. Now, Capital One's mobile app is built on HTML5. There were some criticisms of HTML5 yesterday, but if you were building for scale and you were building for the long term, you would have built this app on HTML5. We decided not to because we're not building for scale. We were building for speed. So we built a quick native Apple app. The other thing we did is we found an API out there that we thought could allow people to redeem points at at the point of sale at retailers. Now, we had lots of ideas for how we could build this better and build it more specifically for our needs, but our goal, again, was speed. So we leveraged this third-party API. And in about 6 weeks, we had an app. So we were pretty excited about this app. We all thought it was awesome. We couldn't wait to use it. We couldn't wait to go down the street and buy pizza and coffee with it. So we started talking about putting it on the App Store, like any good startup does. And unfortunately, we got pretty disappointing reactions. Oops, I forgot. This is what it looks like, by the way. It looks like my slides got rained on because I can't actually show you what it looks like. But I just wanted to show you that we did actually build something. This is a true story, and there is actually an app that does this. But this is what happens when we went and showed this to all the people within Capital One and said, "Isn't this awesome? We're going to launch this." Whoa, you're going to do what? Capital One has a lot of internal committees who are there to protect the customer experience. Typically, we sat down, we started meeting with group after group after group who had really, really important, legitimate concerns about if we were going to release an app to the market that potentially 40 million customers were going to download, that we really needed to go through all of these steps and processes of hardening the app experience and making sure we were protecting people's information, protecting their security, that we were complying with all the federal regulations that a bank is subject to. Well, as you can imagine, Chris was pretty deflated by this. And we started thinking about, so what are our options here? We could spend the next 4 months in meetings and hardening up our app and building it for scale. An app that we had no idea if people actually wanted. We just had a hunch. And we decided that this wasn't the time to persevere. This was the time to pivot. And what we did to pivot was we decided that we don't actually need to launch this in the App Store. We can launch it to our customers, to our associates. One big company benefit we did have is that we have 37,000 employees. This is a pretty large beta group. Turns out most of our employees are customers, and on average, if you look at them, they sort of reflect our customer base. So we looked at our employees. We found a target cohort that resembled the type of person we thought would be super interested in this app, a mobilely active user who had points to burn. And we said, let's test it on you. Now, by doing this allowed us to, really refocus our efforts on proving if this product was worth it as opposed to proving whether it was ready for scale. We also did a couple things. We loaded it up with fake points. So one of the things we really wanted to do was connect this to people, use our rewards API and our new OAuth API and connect this to people's real account data and account information. Now, if we wanted to do that, there was a lot of steps we had to go through to make sure that we weren't going to make a mistake, that we weren't going to accidentally debit someone for 100 points when they meant to do for 50 points. And again, we really didn't want to be on the hook for that. So we loaded people up with fake points. We knew this was going to bias the data. We knew that, but at the end of the day, we weren't looking for statistical relevance. We were looking for learnings. We wanted to know if this was a stupid idea as fast as possible. We wanted to fail fast. So we released this to about 100 people. And this is a picture of Jason, one of our beta testers, using it to buy coffee with his points at Starbucks. And what happened is we got a ton of feedback. And I can't really share the specifics of that feedback, but what I can tell you is we learned two really big important things that changed the course of this product. The first one is that there was a big friction point with regards to one of the technology capabilities that enable this that caused people to fail in a pretty brutal way. The second one was that there were people using it in vastly different ways than we had initially designed. They were basically, what I like to call climbing over chain link fences, going away from what was the intended user experience to find a different way to use it that better suited their lifestyle. So this might not sound like what a great product launch is, but for us it was perfect because we learned what we wanted to learn going in. How would people really use this product? There we go. So what I like to say is we advanced to the next board. Now, if you go back to that decision point we had a couple weeks earlier where we had the option to persevere and go through the 4 months of committees it would take to release an app to the App Store, we would have released the wrong app. We would have released an app that had a really big pain point and that didn't serve what became the popular need we addressed. And so by pivoting and doing what some might think is not as sexy of a product release, we actually failed faster, which means we're now in a position to succeed faster. So we're already in Rev 2 of this product, and we're going to do another pilot release. And we're pretty excited about it. And now when we talk to the groups internally, they're way more interested in talking to us. They're already demanding us to move quicker and faster. And so hopefully, if all goes well with this next pilot, one day this is something that all of you will be able to use. So I'm just going to stand over here. So what did we learn along the way? We learned a bunch of things, and I think for those of you who are inside large companies and trying to do R&D projects, I think these are the big takeaways for this speech. The first one is keep your team small. This is 2 pizzas. If your team is working late and you can't be fed by 2 large pizzas, your team is too big. Everyone on your team needs to have a distinct purpose, a distinct skill set. We typically find 3 to 4 people to be the right size for a new lean product development. One person needs to be the decision owner. There can be one sort of boss at the end of this. This doesn't mean you're not collaborating, but if you're trying to do consensus-driven product development, it's going to take a really long time. Finally, constraints create prioritization. The fewer people there are to do the dev work, the more you start being creative about how you're going to test your hypothesis, like using external APIs or building it native. So this is a really, really important one. The next one is establish that your intent is to fail as quickly as possible. Now, big companies don't like talking about failure. They want to see success. They want to see a PowerPoint presentation that shows when this product goes out the door, I'm 99.99% sure it's going to be a success. Well, those days are over. Technology is changing really fast. Consumer behavior is unpredictable. You need to be going into this saying, I plan to fail multiple times, and that is how I'm going to succeed. Trust me, I got a lot of weird looks when I walked into our first governance meeting with this intention and started talking about failure. But eventually they catch on. Another one of this is get out of the building. This is a lean startup principle. At big companies, there are typically 4 layers between you and your customer. And there's lots of people that don't want you to talk to customers. They want you to hire a focus group. They want you to buy a research report. They want you to pay an expert. You're the expert. Get out there. Talk to your customers. Do it guerrilla style. Find out. Show them your product. Stop people on the street. Trust me, you'll save a lot of heartache. This is a pretty counterintuitive one. Don't over-promote your work. Executives love shiny toys. They love innovation. And if you're working on something that's innovative, they're going to want you to present it. And they're going to want you to present it to lots and lots of people. Now, you have to remember, your customer here is not the executive. Your customer is the end consumer, the person who's going to use this product. The more and more you present this to larger groups, the tendency is you start getting attached to the idea. You start defending it. And then it makes it really hard to fail. And so, keep it small until you learn a little bit more. This doesn't mean don't collaborate and get feedback from people, but be careful about using it as your platform to present like I am today to large groups of people. Negotiate business terms for failure, not success. If you're at a big company, there are a lot of people that want to partner with you, and they see big dollar signs when they talk to you about, wow, at scale, if this product succeeds, this is going to be huge. We're going to make a ton of money. Your product's probably not going to succeed. It's actually probably going to fail. And even if it does succeed, it's probably going to look dramatically different than it did when it started. So when I say negotiate your terms for failure, assume that it's going to fail, assume that it's not going to scale, and figure out a way to make your partner happy anyway. In this case, we paid our API provider a flat fee, sort of a prototyping fee. And they wanted to do all of these negotiations about scale economics, and we would have had to bring in 10 or 20 more people to do that, and it would have slowed us down, and ultimately it wouldn't have mattered. Finally, act like you're on a startup budget. We talked about this in terms of keeping your team small, but just in general, this is a mentality. At a big company, you normally have access to really big resources. You have people that want to help you define the edge cases. You have people that want to do focus groups for you. And you really have to develop that muscle of saying no and really force yourself to think like a startup. One of the beauty of startups is they have these constraints that force them to be lean. And the constraints create creativity, and like I said, they force prioritization and focus. And so keep this in mind when you're trying to build something lean. The early days of the Capital One Labs, we basically just pulled the 5 of us into a conference room. They wanted us to all have our own offices and all have our own desks, but we really wanted to just keep it small, keep it all together. And sort of if you're trying to start a new project inside of a big company, I encourage you to take that approach of what are the fewest number of people I need to get this idea off the ground, and how do I tell the fewest number of people if possible about it. So in summary, we think this is a really effective method. This idea of think big. What is a really big problem that you want to solve for your customers? In the case of Capital One, there are probably several hundred people that are focusing on how to get people more engaged with our rewards programs and solve this big problem. So really pick a big problem, but then put yourself in the shoes of the customer, the end customer. Find an insight that you can really anchor your idea around. Recruit a really small, high-performing team of experts that can help you build something as quick as possible. Get out of the building, talk to people. Continue to get feedback. When people tell you your idea sucks, thank them. They're saving you time. Don't go look for somebody else. Your friends and family don't count because they pretty much always tell you what you're doing is great. Really, we talked about don't over-promote your work, and then, stay small and stay lean. So, the journey's not over for us. We've had a couple products that have gone through this process and come out and launched in the market, and you'll be seeing a lot more over the next year. This has been a really fun journey of taking some of the things I learned at Wikia, my past startup, and sort of relaunching them in Capital One and really leveraging some of the resources that we have. I went through that pretty quickly. I wanted to open time for questions as well as if people want to get going on their next session. So with that, I will open up to questions.
Can you give us the makeup of your teams?
Yes. Question was, can you give us the makeup of the team? The lab right now probably is about 40% developers. And I'd say the rest is a mix between UX design, strategy, and operations. So it's really a dev-heavy team if compared with kind of other teams at Capital One.
You said make your teams 3 to 5 or 3 to 7.
Oh, and the small project teams. I'd say one product manager, one UX/designer, or half of each, and 1 to 2 developers. You can pretty much knock most things out with that. Who was the company recently? I believe Square's initial team was 5 people. So you can do quite a lot of amazing things with 5 people.
Do you have any favorite tools for collaborating, especially being a product person?
Yeah, sticky notes. Yeah. Sticky notes are my favorite thing in the world. The brighter and the more fluorescent the color, the better. But no, I came from Wikia, so we did everything on a wiki. Capital One doesn't have a really great wiki product, so we've been using, I think it's called Greenhopper, which is a tool inside Jira to collaborate. But there's a lot of things pivotal that you can use for user stories. But when you're starting really small and doing minimum viable products, I find that just using the actual balsamic or omnigraphal mock-ups is the best tool because you can annotate them and blow them up really big and put them up on a board, and that becomes a place where you have discussions about what did you really mean when you put that button there, and what's the user really expected to do there. And so kind of the fewer Word docs, the better at this stage. All the way in the back?
Do you only work on problems for the credit card side of the business, or do you also do stuff for like ShareBuilder and ING Direct?
So the question was, do you only work on credit card problems, or what about the other businesses that Capital One has? And great question. We recently acquired ING Direct, which is the country's largest online savings and checking account. And with that, we also got a really great company called ShareBuilder. So absolutely, Rich Fairbanks is dead set that the banking world needs to be disrupted in a really major way. And we're super excited. A lot of the work we're doing is focused on how do you reinvent the way you access your cash and pay people and manage your finances in a holistic way, not just from a credit, but from a investing and savings standpoint as well. Bushman, yeah.
Yeah, so you talked about the need to go through different gatekeepers in terms of going to the consumer. What about the different departments that already focus on digital media? And how could you address do you find yourself stepping on people's toes, people offended, that sort of thing?
Yeah, great question. The question is, isn't there a bunch of people at Capital One who build digital experiences? How do you guys differ from them, and do they get upset with you? And the answer is we work really closely with them. There are a lot of things that we know today we want to build for our customers. We recently launched an ability to set up auto pay for your credit cards, which is something that we recently launched the remote check deposit feature. Those teams are heads down building this scalable, hardened technology to deliver those features to 40 million people. And what we typically like to do is kind of think about, well, what are those experiences going to be 18 months out from now? And help them accelerate the learning agenda. So for the product we just talked about, once we get through the next pilot and we get pretty sure we understand what the customer experience should be, the next step really would be to hand it off to the larger digital team, and they would take it and scale it and make it something that could be released to 40 million customers. Yes, right.
Can you comment on how Labs got started, at what level and function in the organization? How was it then approved and investment made available to the team?
Yes, and I'm going to ask James Patterson to jump in if I get this wrong, but this was actually came from Rich Fairbanks himself. His chief of staff, who's the head of all the enterprise services in the company, marketing, brand, technology, basically said, we really need to accelerate our investment in the digital space. The digital revolution is happening, and it's actually a better way to interact with our customers. So it spawned out of his desire to make sure that both in the digital division we were investing, and then there was also this idea of the lab who could kind of jump ahead some of the digital initiatives and really start to explore uncharted territory. Does that answer the question, or was there? Okay.
Was it difficult to get approval to actually go ahead with it and then get the investment internally?
Yeah, so because it came from, like I said, Rich Fairbanks himself, it was his directive. We've gotten amazing support. Now, of course, over the course of the next couple of years, we have to show that we're providing a really great ROI. And so, we've been talking about what are sort of some of our metrics for success. And, there's things like patents that will be measured against. There's things like how many of our ideas actually end up in market. As well as we've taken on some of the responsibilities of just overall increasing the digital fluency of the company. We've spent a lot of time with different executives in the card and bank business and teaching them about some of these new technologies and helping them understand how to apply them to their businesses. I'll go over here. Yes.
It seems like you're focused mostly on the consumer side, but what about on the enterprise side?
Yeah, so the question was, you only focus on consumer, what about enterprise? We do typically focus mostly on consumer. That's the area that gets us most excited. Most of us have a background in consumer products, and that's kind of where Capital One's leverage is from a profitability standpoint. We'd love to tackle. We've done some stuff for the small business bank and thinking about how we enable small business owners to be more digital with how they manage their finances.
Yeah, I was speaking more to the 37,000 employees that you have.
Ah, yes, yeah.
I think that's probably one of your bigger weaknesses as a bank. For example, being probably the last bank to offer auto pay in this space.
To customers or to employees?
To customers.
To customers, yeah.
It's just an example of
Mm-hmm.
my sense is a lack of enterprise focus or applications that make the 37,000 employees more attractive.
Okay, 37. Yeah. No, I mean, we're about a year old, so we're still building up our capability, and that's definitely something we'll look at. The question was, do you build apps and tools for your employees to be more productive? Top purple sweater. Is that purple?
Blue.
Great
presentation.
Thank you.
You have a little bit of an advantage with an internal population of 37,000 test candidates or users. You have great experience. Do you recommend any other ways for startups to get sort of initial consumer test when they don't have that kind of resource available?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, the struggle of a startup, right? How do you know if your idea is six? How do you find that target population? When I was at Wikia, we used Wikipedia a lot to test some of our new ideas because, that was a product that had scale that we felt had an overlap in sort of consumer type, and we felt like we had a platform to talk to them, having shared the same founder. So maybe if there's a population of a product that's similar, you can find a way to kind of use that as a, hey, we're trying this out, let us know what you think. We did a lot of stuff on forums in the early days. I know forums seem so 1999, but people really hang out on them all day, and they'll give you some pretty honest feedback if you ask for it. So I guess just find those like niche interest groups and just ask. People love sharing their opinion.
Great, thanks.
Yes. Yeah. Whoever thinks they have a better question. Thanks.
You talked about going through governance, going through a variety of committees. Assuming this goes forward, who's going to carry that message through the governance committees? And have you thought about what the pitch is going to be to convince more seasoned, more hardened types that this is a viable?
Yeah, the pitch is actually what our users tell us, and we have reams and reams of. There's like a feedback button in the app, as well as we're doing sort of post video. And turns out when customers talk, executives listen. So that's our biggest weapon, is having a group of consumers who are using it, who love it, who want it. And then we, like I said, we're partnering really closely with the head of mobile in the bank and the head of mobile in the credit card and all the different technology leaders throughout the company to make sure they know what we're doing each step of the way. So they're thinking ahead and going, okay, this is where the industry is going. How do we make sure our platform architecture is ready for things like this? And so the answer is we're not 100% sure, but as long as we build something that customers want, we're convinced that we'll break through the clutter. Yes.
Actually, two questions. One I think is faster is Capital One Labs also going to innovate on the Share Builder platform, and where do you guys get your ideas to begin with? I mean, where do these core ideas initiate from? Do they all come from the feedback button?
Yeah, where do the ideas come from? A little bit of everywhere, a little bit from everything. A lot of them come from our own heads, kind of sitting around and doing these sort of innovation days and hackathons and whatnot that kind of spur creative juices. We also have folks within all the different business units, because a lot of us are outsiders to financial industry, so they come to us and say, we're really, we have this idea, we have this opportunity, we have this piece of research that shows that consumers have pains here or they want this. Can you help us think about how to approach this in a new way? What technologies are available that could help us, or what's the right way to think about this? So it's a little bit from the bottoms up, a little bit from tops down, as well as collaborating with the ecosystem. So we have the team that's out in San Francisco meets regularly with all the different startups and tech companies up and down the coast, and those meetings actually foster a ton of ideas for how we could be, expanding our universe and leveraging some of our data sets in new ways. So it's a little bit of everything. Share Builder, we haven't done anything to date yet for that, but it's definitely on our radar.
Just a request, can we come back the orange?
The orange. I'll send that on. Yeah.
My question is about the limits of the mission of the labs team. If you came up with an idea that delivered a great deal of value to Capital One shareholders, the user, customers, etc., but also would become just that much more powerful if it were available to other financial institutions, would that be a limit?
There aren't a lot of rules right now. So again, I think we're looking at this pretty holistically. Our goal is to spin off meaningful business opportunities and really move the needle in a dramatic way, and opening up our platforms and helping to support other financial institutions. I think that's definitely something we're willing to consider if the idea is there. But yeah, kind of everything's on the table right now.
I guess in that vein, I went to a presentation, I guess it was yesterday, and they mentioned Kiva, which they provide zero interest loans.
Yes.
They mentioned you all as a possible partner. Can you talk about it? They didn't have specifics of what was going on.
Yeah, I'm not involved in any conversations with Kiva, but I'd love to be. I love that organization.
I guess just to follow up on that, what about this sort of notion about access to credit? I mean, because it seems to me that if you look at folks that are basically on the margins or the poor, historically, I mean, Capital One, I mean, I think as we all know, is sort of known for high interest, credit cards to people that really, don't have the wherewithal to sort of make payment in a lot of ways. And, predatory lending, I guess, to bring up that word. So can you sort of
Yeah, so is the question
Well,
is,
that issue.
do I agree with your assessment or what? Because no. Yeah, I think, we have a couple values at the company, and there's really two that speak to me on a daily basis, and it's excellence and do the right thing. And Capital One, if you actually read into it, most of the CARD Act that was passed by Congress last year, Capital One was already doing most of those things way before that. So they really pride themselves on really trying to do the right thing for the customer, and really, our desire to extend credit to people that other credit card companies wouldn't necessarily do comes from our ability to really manage that process and make sure we're walking them through and graduating them up through levels that they can really sustain. So, I think that that's going to continue to be one of our goals, and making sure that people at every end of the economic spectrum have access to 401ks, have access to checking accounts, have access to credit, whatever they need to sort of manage their health. It really is one of Rich's ultimate goals and legacies he wants to leave in the world, is just being known as a financial services company that has really improved lives and really shaped how people can act with their money. I know that sounds strange to hear from a bank, but it really has been one of our core values from the beginning, and I at least I've drank that Kool-Aid. Yeah.
Is there a process by which people from outside can come to your group and say, I have a good idea, it's profitable, or is it still very
Organic, yeah. It's pretty organic right now. If you go to our developer.capitalonelabs.com, there's a contact us form, and we have someone kind of reviewing those and reaching out and fleshing out ideas. But or come down here after the talk, and it's pretty organic right now. I think we've got a couple minutes left, maybe one or two more questions. Yep.
Any of the initial limitation of obviously the regulatory issues, a couple months of meetings, things like that, and obviously having a user pool of roughly 30,000 users, or 37,000 users, that's a phenomenal resource. The only thing I worry about is if you test a group that's within the company, even if they are users themselves, perhaps there's an inkling of bias. And if that's wide scale enough, then if it weren't something that were tested out with a randomized group out in the public, maybe you'd miss out on that piece of feedback that could change the product fundamentally.
Yeah.
Do you think that might have happened?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely something that keeps us up at night. If you think about going back to some of, I don't know if you've read The Lean Startup or some of Eric Ries's work, but, we're not going for statistical significance. We're going for, real failure, right? So we're not saying this product was a huge success. We're just saying it didn't crash and burn. And if you really frame it like that, you can kind of really see how you step up through the different levels. And so absolutely this will go to a beta group of live, completely random, unbiased customers at some point. But we want to make sure that we don't skip a step, and that isn't our first step, because we will have wasted, a lot of time and valuable learnings along the way. Great. Well, thank you very much. Just a quick pitch. We are hiring. We're hiring mobile developers, Java developers, big data engineers, product managers, user experience designers, UI designers. We have Erica and Celeste down here in the front row. So if you're interested, come chat. Thank you very much.